and I've recently moved everything online. But today, my guest is a woman, a person of many talents who combines her absolute passion for education and ecology with entertainment. Her field of study is economics and environmental science, and she's an outdoor environmental officer. She's also a forest school ecologist, a puppeteer who packs a playful punch in her innovative Punch and Judy shows, a flea circus, a ringmaster and tree doctor. She's also, if that's not enough, she's also a boundary-breaking clown, Lady Canardly Walk of the wonderfully, terrifically named The Disappointing Clown Company. Brilliant. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome and chat to Teresa Verney-Brooks, Professor Queen Bee. Hello, Teresa.
Hello, Maggie.
Nice. I'm a doctor, and you're a professor.
I think I've outranked you, Maggie.
Off my cat.
I think. I've definitely outranked you. I did feel a bit when I heard you, doctor. I thought, no, hold on a minute. No, professor.
Yeah. So can we start from there? Tell me more, Professor and Flea Circus Ringmaster. Dive in.
Well, maybe I'll do a bit of a background in a minute as to why I became the professor, but I wasn't quite sure. When I took up Punch and Judy, I wasn't quite sure what to call myself, because there's not that many female Punch and Judy performers. I really wanted to keep to quite a sort of traditional sort of tone to it, and I did want to be professor, but I wasn't quite sure how you become a professor. and then there's this urban myth that you're a professor once you've swallowed your swazzle 6 times, which thankfully I've now learned is not true, or I hope it's not true. And then I ordered some puppets. In particular, I commissioned a chap called Brian Davey down in Dorset to make me a really lovely Prince Charles puppet, which he did, and it's lovely. It's a lovely puppet, and he addressed it to Professor. So I thought, that's it. So maybe when another very well-known Punch and Judy person calls you a professor, then I think I've got them.
You've definitely made it, haven't you? So wonderful to get to that accolade of professor. I love that, and hang on to it. So let's just go back to the beginnings. Then you weren't always a professor, were you? How did this all kind of start off?
Well, I've worked, I've got a background, as you said, in ecology and conservation, and I've worked for some really amazing organisations like the Wildlife Trust and RSPB, and sort of doing quite sort of hard-nosed science, quite didactic sort of lessons. And I gradually started introducing puppets, like bird puppets. I do realise that puppets do take me over a little bit, and I do become a little bit Rod Hull-anemia. I probably frightened more children than I've turned on. I've got this one that's a robin, and it goes definitely a bit Rod Hull. But I realised that how fascinating the interaction between children and sometimes the teachers and a puppet, and it almost takes it out of the first person to the third person, and particularly boys, I hate to say this, but it's true, would talk to the puppet in a much more kind of verbally sort of flowery way than they would to me. So it unlocked my hand without the puppet, that's a naked puppet. It unlocked a lot of really good language with children, and obviously puppets are used quite a lot for therapeutic reasons and in sort of counselling and therapy for children. So I've always kind of had a bit of an interest with puppets anyway, and that dynamic, like I said, between punter and puppet. So
did you, when you were at school then, were you kind of interested in kind of sort of drama, theatre performance? Was that your thing? Oh yes.
No, not really. I mean, I went. I've got a real working class background, and we used to go our biannual holiday was always to Butlins, and I just think it just gave me a really ingrained sort of passion for working class culture, and seeing proper variety shows in red velvet seats, like sort of proper theatre seats with a great big curtains and dancing girls. And for somebody that had never been to the theatre, that was like, wow,
it had a huge impact.
Oh, it really did. And sort of seeing all the sort of comedians, and my mum and dad used to sometimes completely illegally let me sneak in. They used to have like a midnight show in the bar called the Pig and Whistle, if anybody used to go to Butlins Bognor. And I've seen, like, from under a table, actually, like Bernard Manning and all that. I mean, love or hate him, his timing was brilliant. But not necessarily what he was saying. So yeah, I saw some quite big sort of
big
names.
stars.
And there was also it just tickled me pink when Heidi High came on, because there did used to be a children's entertainer at Bognor Regis, and he was called Uncle Johnny, and he was the most grumpiest, like, child-hating, possibly alcoholic, looking back now. And he did do Punch and Judy, but he was just this hideous man. He just was so rude. But I think obviously somewhere along the line, it really did have quite a big impact. So I do remember seeing Punch and Judy sort of early on, but how I kind of became reacquainted with it, I guess, was my ex-husband now is from Llandudno. So when my children were little, we always used to take them up there for all the school holidays. And anyone that knows Llandudno knows that they've got the longest running Punch and Judy still on the pier there. I watched it with my children, and I was quite outraged actually when I saw it, and went round and had a go at the Punch and Judy man, and he basically told me to do one. And I think it just sparked this absolute interest. And further along the coast in Colwyn Bay is a brilliant little puppet theatre where I can't think his name, Chris, I can't think what his surname is. His stage name is Mr. Bim Bamboozle, but he does like proper marionettes, a show like a pantomime with marionettes, and I mean, he is like fantastic. And so I would just sort of pin him down after a show one night and said, "Oh my God, I'm really like fascinated." And he said, go to Mr. Punch's birthday party, which is what we now know is the May Fair at Covent Garden. And I took my then young son along to this gathering of Punch and Judy people from all around the world, and clowns, and just people with swazzles. That's the way to do it. and just petrified. My son won't watch any of my shows because I think it just petrified him. And then we went into, and then if anyone's ever been to the Mayfair, it's such a fantastically eccentric British event. It's wonderful. Is in the church before all the Punch and Judy kicks off. The vicar, who I believe used to work on Spitting Image, is a puppeteer, and he actually did part of the service with Mr. Punch. And he just sort of said, you know, who hasn't got that alter ego that when authority tells you off, you want to just kind of, you know, to the authority, and that little, and who hasn't got a good and a bad side? And if you ever let that bad side out, what would it look like? And I just, the penny dropped, and I thought, oh my God, as an ex-punk myself, Mr. Punch is the ultimate anarchist.
Wow.
So I kind of, the penny dropped with the whole anarchic sort of side of it, which I think that's more than anything that really, really drew me to it, was that complete naughty anarchic side.
I love this. Going back to your roots of the working class, of that background, and it obviously really impacted on you in a huge way. And I think for me,
massively.
Even though the 1970s comedians, you know, we look back and we think not PC, not right.
Absolutely.
That's what was happening. Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's really uncomfortable to even sort of think about what was going on in the 70s. Yeah. And I think, is it John? Oh God, I'm so rubbish at names. John, whoever he is from the Far Show. He did, I just thought, the perfect sort of Mickey take with, I don't know if you saw Bernard Wright on. Yeah. He's there as Bernard Manning, like, you know, cool, but, you know. And he just says like what sound like his sort of feeder lines sound really outrageous. But then he kind of backs it up with sort of like wonderfully PC sort of. I think I have nicked that a little bit. I do a walkabout as well.
Everything
I have nicked it a little bit.
Recycled, isn't it? It's interesting,
exactly.
Isn't it? The clown, the puppeteer can say the unspeakable. But you've got this background in ecology. So where's that? Did you start off in ecology before you hit puppetry? How did it all kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think coming from quite, like I said, quite a didactic sort of teaching, although I've always worked in the outdoors, and I guess looking back now as a performer, that really does help, because I always used to think, right, I work outdoors, so I've got weather, I've got children and wild animals, like what is there to go right? So I mean, you're so, every time I teach outside, there's always something, so you've got to be so reactive as an outdoor teacher. And I gradually just started putting more puppetry in, more drama. So for example, if I was teaching about trees, I'd actually make them into roots and into the stem and into the branch, into the leaves, photosynthesizing, and just realizing that that really kind of, that play and that silliness. And I think some children look at you and think, but she's a grown up. And I do loads of stuff, like I put sort of environmentally friendly glitter out in the woods and go, oh my God, the fairies have been here. But I think they just look at you and think, oh my God, she's a grown up being really silly. So I kind of realized I was kind of onto something using the humor and the puppets. And I just then had this eureka moment that I woke up one morning after far too much kava the night before and just thought, right, I'm going to use Punch and Judy to get across like an environmental message. And the more I went down that road, it almost like wrote itself. It was, I was, like I said, I was really, really keen to keep to quite a traditional storyline. I know people have taken Punch and Judy all over the place, and it's a great platform, isn't it, for lots of things. But I felt very strongly I wanted to keep to that tradition and keep it fairly traditional, which I have. But the only difference is in mine is that this sounds so ridiculous when you say it, but Judy, who I base on Linda Snell from the Archers, she's got a environmental busybody, and she's a beekeeper, and Mr. Punch does all these terrible things, and she sets one of her bees on him, which he is scared of bees, so he whacks it with his slapstick, sticks it in the sausage machine. And seriously, in my shows, I mean, I work quite a lot of big festivals, so I have really big audiences. I've watched so many Punch and Judy shows where the baby will go into the sausage machine, no one bats an eyelid. Do you know what I mean? Fair play. But when I put that bee puppet, I might add, into the sausage machine, I've had to quicken the scene up a little bit because I can't bear that. There's this like shock, horror, she's killed a bee. And then out of the sausage machine comes yellow and black sausages. Of course, then you've got the punchline, is it, where people laugh and you think, I've got this wonderful sense of relief that I've actually, they're laughing again from the shock. And then the normal Punch and Judy plays out, the crocodile comes, eats the sausages, and Joey the Clown and the devil and blah, blah, blah. And then again, quite fascinatingly, in terms of the interaction of children with puppets, is I introduce it at the beginning, go into my booth, and then come out at the end and ask what's gone on. And children, they can hardly breathe. They're so like, like I wasn't there.
You never saw any of it.
But I do my show at quite a lot of like nature reserves, and maybe not a traditional sort of audience that that would possibly see a Punch and Judy show or theatre. So
that's brilliant. Like, I love this idea that you're taking theatre out to, you know, to a place where people aren't expecting to see that message. But can we go back a little bit? So you're creating these shows. What was the journey into becoming a conservationist of the environment? Do you do a degree, or how?
Well, I left school with no exams whatsoever, and then ended up going back to college in my mid-20s, or back to college, started schooling, but actually I couldn't even write a sentence. In my mid-20s, I did an O-level, and then I did an A-level, and then I did an access course. And I was just really lucky to have really good, encouraging teachers that said, Teresa, you've got a brain, use it. So I really wanted to go into politics, believe it or not. And then, so I went to college and did political economy, but I was quite limited to where I could go. And I went to King Alfred's College, and it was like political economy and environmental sciences. And I started doing the environmental sciences, and I just had this massive switch turned on in my head. I had a fantastic professor of a lecturer that was completely obsessed with poo, as it happens. I did lots of freshwater ecology around sewage farms. I know. And so that was it. No politics. I thought at one point of combining sort of politics and environmental, but I just knew that was absolutely my passion. So I did a degree. I then did a 2-year course at an agricultural college, learning how to herd sheep and clip their toenails. And sheep always hated my lipstick for some reason, red. And it was really, I learned how to chop trees down between certain boundaries and things, and drive a tractor. And so yeah, I did that for a couple of years, but it was really good, and learned quite a lot of practical sort of, you know, management skills as a ranger. And then went on and did a 2 years master's in ecology, and just realized that there was quite a gap in the market between, God, I'm going to sound really awful, a bit low level stereotypical here, but it's different now. But when I first started out in conservation, it was, everyone certainly did look slightly like David Bellamy. Do you know what I mean? Like the elbow patches. I'm being awful, aren't I? But it is kind of, it was quite true.
Describe more.
Sandal socks, you know, those.
Yeah.
Sorry, so, you know, like typical geography teachers, shall we say, and male. And I just realised that there's, I mean, you know, I've met some amazing people, you know, through my conservation work, that are just like absolute, like their knowledge is phenomenal, but getting that knowledge across to an audience, you know, to younger people particularly, is that felt to me the bit that was missing. And I think, I can't remember David Attenborough's wonderful saying about that, unless you understand something, you can't love it. And if you don't love it, you're not going to protect it. So that's always been my real kind of thing, is to get children really involved with nature and nature conservation in a way that they will want to protect it. It's called in the books pro-environmental behaviour. So yeah, and that's been my sort of like real passion of trying to get people and wildlife together.
So did you say wake up one day and go like, oh, I want to do Punch and Judy, I want to be a clown?
I literally did. And the more Punch and Judy people that I've met who have come to it in later life, because obviously there's a lot of Punch and Judy people have had it passed down through the generations, from their granddads to their, you know, dads, and Glyn Edwards, the Punch and Judy man in Brighton, he had it handed down from his granddad, his dad, and now his daughter and granddaughter do it. So there's like 5-6 generations of Punch and Judy people in their family. But people like myself that have come to it late all say they had this really weird epiphany. And I think my friend Martin, who's on here, I'll probably talk about later, I met him through Punch and Judy, and he actually walked past an antique shop in Oxford or somewhere and saw a Punch character in the window, walked past and walked back, and just thought, I've got to go and buy him. And ended up doing Punch and Judy, literally from just walking. So it's, I don't know, it's this Punch and Judy. I've been amazed how many other people have had a really similar story. So it can't be a coincidence, can it?
No, that's amazing. It's also amazing. You talked about being a woman doing the Punch and Judy show. As being a woman, an environmentalist, and you talked about, you know, the stereotypical environmentalist with sandals and patches. So you've embarked in a career that was traditionally done by a lot of men. How has it been? How was the transition? How do you find it? Are you welcomed? So what's the impact that you talk about not being political?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a couple of knockbacks at the beginning, and I did write to a couple of Punch and Judy people and to bounce some ideas off, really, and one sent me a letter back going, should not use Punch and Judy as a vehicle for environmental messages, or any messages for that matter.
Wow.
I presume you choose another genre or another puppet.
Wow.
So I did set me back, not for very long, because then somebody else, I then saw a really, really rubbish Punch and Judy show at a school fete, and I thought, I cannot be as bad as that. I don't mean, I just know that I could do better than that. So I just went out there and did it. And I think it's been a slow, gradual sort of acceptance, but then I can understand why, because it's Mr. Punch is our national puppet. It's, it's got, such a tradition on its shoulders that, and I felt this real thing that I had to do it properly, that I did feel that responsibility on my shoulders to do it as well as I possibly could. I mean, I knew I could never be as good as other people that have been doing it since they were children, and they're now, been doing the same show and they're in their 70s. But if I can do it as well as I possibly can and reach new audiences, and also to try and take it out of, it's become very much a thing of birthday parties or sort of, a corner of village fete. I really did want to take it back into mainstream
It's really interesting, isn't it, the idea of tradition and holding up tradition. I mean, I think when I came into clowning, I was very aware that all the books were, you know, about men clowning. There was nothing, the whole point of me doing the PhD was that we didn't seem to have appeared that there were any female clowns doing this, which was complete myth. It's just nobody had written about us. And so when I came to do the research and I came to perform, I was kind of undoing and unpacking and challenging all the traditions. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that the man that maybe was going like, you can't do that, you can't change Punch and Judy, because this has always been like, I think that we know it's our duty in a way to kind of think, well, how, you know, the bashing, how do we then kind of revisit that and revision that as something that with a different ending? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. There have been quite a few sort of there have been female Punch and Judy, but whenever you see any pictures or any sort of photographs, it's always a man, and it's always referred to as the Punch and Judy man. So that's the only thing that sometimes I kind of say to people, person or just professor. I mean, I quite like the professor, because first of all, I was going to call myself Madame Queen Bee, in the Madame sort of vein, but I decided to go with professor, which is quite nice because and I think when I'm using a swazzle, because I've got quite a deep voice, I realise as a woman, if people don't see me at the beginning and realise that I am a woman, I hope I look like a woman, when I come out of my booth at the end, people do seem quite shocked that it's been a woman that's done the show, because obviously I use the swazzle for Mr. Punch's voice, and all the other sort of voices, and with a deep voice, people go, oh my God, and I didn't think it was a woman, or they think I'm in there with a bloke.
So it's quite linked to political then, isn't it? And we're going to come on to that political and some stuff on the Red Brigade, you know, that you've done. But just I must ask about the disappointing clown company in this. Where is this amazing? I love this lady can hardly walk. Tell me more.
Well, it's my friend Martin, or people know as Professor Eek, who I met through Punch and Judy. Am I allowed to say Martin? No, I'm sure is watching. We do sometimes have little nights with big bottles of spice rum, don't we, Martin? And come up with the most ridiculous ideas, one of them being the disappointing clown company, because we realised, you know, we weren't particularly really good at anything particularly, but then we sort of thought, actually, that could actually be quite a hit. So I don't know whether anybody knows Professor Panic, who runs the big circus in the kids' field at Glastonbury. Martin had worked in the kids' field for many years, and Martin said, look, how about I get you into Glastonbury, we do our disappointing clown company thing. So the first year we went around with Sad Frank's disco, and Martin was Sad Frank, and he's about 6'6" tall and wide. I'm sure I won't mind me saying that either, Martin. And we just and he looked a bit like sort of like a dodgy 70s DJ. And he was saying, he was going, you know, I might look like a dodgy 70s DJ, but I've got a full DBS, the only 70s DJ with a DBS. And we just had like this banging sound system playing out really crap sort of 70s tunes, like, you know, like You Can Ring My Bell and Oops Upside Your Head. And we were just like chucking cans, going chuck a can, chuck a can, and just doing all this ridiculous stuff. And we had like, you know, like one of those disco lights that turn around, and we had like our head torches shining on it. So it was complete rubbish, but people absolutely loved it. So we kind of knew we were onto something. So we thought, right, how can we stretch this sort of being rubbish? So we came up with, now what we do in our routine is we do a really bad, it's really crap face painting. So we only have blue or green, but we put on, we have a sign saying, you know, we are the disappointing clown company, book early to avoid satisfaction. So they get in what's on the tin. So there's no sort of, and then we give them a list of things that you can be when you're blue, like maybe the sky or a river or somebody that's got hypothermia. I shouldn't be laughing at my own jokes. And then green, you know, same thing. And then we do things like really crap balloon modelling, where you can have a snake or a worm or a sword, but without a handle. And again, people seem to bloody love it. And so we just have queues of these children that just want to be underwhelmed, it seems. And then the parents kind of got this really sick, weird thing that they're actually enjoying seeing their children completely humiliated and painted blue. So it's just been like a real phenomenal success, actually. And I think it's just, so we can be as rubbish as we completely want. And another thing, because Martin's quite poorly, we've had to sort of think of things that we can do sitting down. So Sad Frank with a big disco sort of thing it wasn't really sort of, you know, up for doing that really. So we needed to do something a bit more sedentary. So we also started off doing pig racing. So we've got like a whole, it's like sort of, you know, like horse racing, but just these little tiny pigs, and we've got all like stupid names. And so I'm Lady Can Hardly Walk, and he's, you know, Sir Can Hardly Walk's had too much bloody gin. And yeah, we just have so much. We did that at Glastonbury last year as well, and again, people loved it. I mean, it's really stupid, but
I think it's fantastic, isn't it? Because I think, you know, in a clown, you've got to be prepared. It's all about failure, isn't it? Or not all about failure, but the idea that if it's not going right, it's right.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's because we're almost saying we're rubbish up front, so it just gives you license to be absolutely crap. And we did another one that we've got loads of different routines that we play with. Another one is Martin. It's called Owl Boy. And we sort of, you know, I go around with a big megaphone, say, half man, half beast, come and see Owl Boy. And then Martin's just sat there in a deck chair with like a, you know, just a towel over his head or his blanket, and pull it off. And he's got this really, really crap owl outfit from IKEA. It's really rubbish. And so we just do this whole act with like rubbish owl jokes. And yeah, like basically loads of rubbish owl jokes, squirting cream on the audience, pretending it's bird poo, which of course the children love. And then our grand finale is the, you know, the Tommy Cooper's head turn trick. So yeah. It's the owl, and of course kids absolutely love it. We just got like an old beer crate that we had to keep. We didn't start painting it till we got to Glastonbury, and we thought it's really inappropriate having like a beer box, isn't it, for kids? So we kept trying to paint over the Corona, and every morning we woke up and it was there. Because like, oh.
Corona being, you know. Don't mention the C word. How have you been? How have you been? Have you been in? In this changed time when you're not out there performing and sharing your environmental messages? Have you adapted at all?
Yeah, I mean, I do have another couple of characters that I use. One of them is called the Tree Doctor. The reason she's called the Tree Doctor is that I had a big commission from the Woodland Trust with a friend of mine, and so what I do is I go out dressed as a doctor with you know, like really stupid sort of doc bag with really silly doctor things in it, and a trolley,
like me.
And and I just sort of like, emergency, you know, don't panic, but there's been a terrible outbreak of nature deficit disorder in this area, but don't worry, I'm a doctor, trust me, I'm a doctor. I'm here to give you a daily dose of nature. So I've actually got like a trolley of loads of stuff that I literally take into, again, quite urban places that probably aren't suspecting it, but it's just a really good way of getting people involved. So I've kept I've been doing sort of online things for schools as the Tree Doctor, sort of literally writing prescriptions and sort of showing them, and but quite educational. So I've got like things like a very expensive listening device, which is basically a tube of a Hoover, and I'm kind of then start doing all these really stupid bird noises. But it again, it works. It's, you know, I mean, cuckoo.
Oh, brilliant. That's amazing. I love it. I think you should patent that, Teresa.
and then so I've just been doing stuff online, and another character that I use is Professor Smarty Pants, who's this kind of based on the people that I used to, those geography teachers in conservation. But she's got this big wig and a big sort of like, yeah, like, if you know Johnny Morris, it was kind of like Johnny Morris meets David Bellamy. And just advising people what they can do in their gardens to make it more environmentally friendly. And that I've got a big crocodile around my neck as if I'm in lockdown, so I can't go out exploring like I normally do. So I've got to just make do with my front garden. But I've actually, my front garden, it's only a little tiny terrace house. I put in a little tiny pond, James Pond. Some really crap puns. And I do like mini beast towers and stag beetle abodes and hedgehog houses, and just sort of put like labels on all of them, demonstrated how to make them to different schools I work with, so they can be doing that if they haven't got a garden, you know.
So inspirational. It's so
do you think?
I do, because I think being playful and educational at the same time it's so attractive. It's a buzz of excitement, and you're obviously really passionate.
Yeah, and I guess for me it's any means that works really, and I think once I hit on that funny worked, and that children and grown-ups, because that's the thing, is you have to, you know, like when I'm sort of, even when I'm teaching, you know, you need the teachers, you need everybody to be on board.
Okay.
Yeah, so it comes from a very deep sort of place of passion, like I said, just to try and engage people. And if that, and so I guess I use clowning as a conduit really. I mean, I never really saw myself as a clown until somebody pointed it out. It's
right.
like,
Well, let's just have
is
a
that
wee
clowning?
break there. A wee break. Excuse me. It is a wee break. You know what I mean? A tea break, wee break. So, a couple of minutes, folks. 2 or 3 minutes. Just go and grab yourself a glass of water, and we'll recommence. We're not going away. Please come back. Just a couple of minutes, and we'll see you. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay.
Just.
Oh, people are giving the names. Guess John Thompson, Bernard Wright on. Brilliant.
Okay. If you've got any questions that you'd like to pose to Teresa, please pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll get around to them towards the end. Thank you, Ben Cornish. Yes, I want to see photos of this magical play garden. So, Teresa, before we stop there quickly, you mentioned clowning and not realizing you were a clown. So tell me a little bit about that. And I kind of want to kind of go back to this idea that you originally were looking at politics, and so you didn't realize you were a clown, and now you are a clown. So talk us through that, and let's perhaps lead it into, you know, how you made this, or do you make this political?
Yeah, it was only, I mean, I guess again, my lovely friend Professor Martin, it was him that said, but what you're doing is clowning. And funnily enough, the same had happened to him with his Punch and Judy show, where somebody had said to him, but essentially what you're doing outside your booth is clowning. And once somebody had sort of given him that sort of spark, then you think, yeah. So again, it was with me, like I started going to the Grimaldi service. Obviously the Joey the Clown from Punch and Judy is based on Joseph Grimaldi. Yeah. So I kind of went along really with my Punch and Judy head on to the Grimaldi service, and again you sort of met a few clowns, and then just sort of thought, maybe that's what I'm doing, maybe that's, you know, I am clowning. And then I guess once I started working with Martin and we called ourselves the Disappointed Clown Company, then you've almost given yourself that sort of title. And, you know, I guess I've then met Dave, and Dave, who he still moans, I've still got loads of his clown books. But so I started reading around the subject a little bit, really, and it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like another door that opens. That's just really kind of, yeah.
You didn't go on any clown courses then, Teresa, or any?
I did. I mean, I did a couple of clown courses, but again, I didn't particularly even enjoy them, and I'm sorry for the person that did it. It wasn't the course; it was just I don't think that I enjoyed doing clown courses. and then I had an amazing, but that really, I'd never had to stand up in front of other people. I've only ever stood up in front of an audience, and I've just, how I've done my shows is I literally take it out. If it doesn't work, I fiddle it around. So I've never really, that's how I've just operated my shows. So I found it quite nerve-wracking, never having to be into drama school, actually standing up and doing stuff in front of other grown-ups. I just found really, really quite intimidating, and I dare I say humiliating. But then what that gave me was then I think a little bit of confidence. And then I saw yourself, Maggie, talking at the London Mime Festival about clowning at Jackson's Lane, and saw the amazing Nola Ray talk, and I was fascinated by Nola. And anyway, somehow I got in my inbox, there was then a course of Nola's, a 5-day mime course. So I spent 5 days, and I don't know, I saw Nola's on here earlier on, and yeah, she was a total and utter inspiration. I was quite happy just to pay my money just to sit and watch Nola for 5 days.
Wow.
I don't think I was particularly good at mime, but it was things like, the things that she taught me was slow down, because I think, because I'm quite a hectic person, and I just want to pack as much as I can in, and it was the timing and the slow down. And I've done some work with Ollie Crick, hello Ollie, again about trying to slow down and give the audience time to digest things, and that whole sort of timing sort of side of things. So yeah, and I think as well, I think working with Nola really, really did help, because I've got a flea circus as well. So obviously dealing with really kind of little things, I think that whole mime really did help me, particularly with, because I came out of my booth, because I had the pleasure of my booth, so I didn't particularly need to be a performer, because I was just inside a little box with doing this. So that was quite a big leap to come out of my booth and to be a performer. But I knew, because I had my sort of teaching background, I never particularly saw that audience thing as an issue. But I just wanted to do it well. Yeah. And I'm still so learning, and there's things that I learned with Nola that they gradually make sense, don't they? When you are performing, or when you watch performers, you suddenly think, oh yeah, that I get it now. Yeah, I get it. So that's the only sort of training I've really done. But I go and I watch an awful lot of outdoor theatre, and I go and see loads of stuff. I'm a real sort of consumer of the arts. So it's just sort of
boundary breaking stuff then, Teresa, as clown?
Sorry, say that again.
Boundary breaking stuff as clown?
Well, I guess, I mean, I do a walkabout as Mr. Punch, which is really that. I really enjoy doing it, but it's so unpredictable, and it really, I was saying earlier on about that anarchic side that Mr. Punch seems to unleash. I've had to sometimes take people with me so they can see what I mean, but people go a bit nuts when I turn up. It's like it unleashes this mad, it's not just the child in them, it's the really, really bad child in them. And obviously, because I'm sort of playing with a gender thing quite a lot, because I've actually got quite big boobs, dare I say, so I can't really hide them. So I've kind of like this, they often call me Judy. They don't, even though I'm supposed to be Mr. Punch, they often call me Judy. And men get quite amorous when I'm doing it. I mean, this is what I've had to really struggle with, is like at festivals, like once this guy just literally picked me up, put me over his knee, and got my slapstick and started slapping.
No, what did you do?
But you think is, you mean if you're putting yourself out there, and I think, I mean, I based it a little bit on Bernard Wright, on that Mr. Punch is actually completely misunderstood, so he pushes it right to the edge. Like, I mean, this is with adults, not with children, I might add. And I've got stupid things like a cushion with a cockerel in my pram with the baby, and I'm saying to women, I think you need to sit on my cock, and then get out my sort of cock picture. So I'm taking it right to the edge. Do you know what I mean? And then also, I talk about, do they want to see Judy's tits? And I get out a picture of blue tit and a great tit. And go, oh yes, lovely. So I am pushing it right to the edge.
No, it's fantastic. It's kind of naughty. So it's some trickster, a bit of a trickster in there, isn't there?
Oh, I've got totally. But it's that's been a really interesting character to work with, because when I walk along with a pram, and I work with somebody that's just in plain clothes, and they've got like a a soundtrack. So they like, so my baby in my pram is Donald Trump, and he's farting and burping. I mean, it's really childish, guttural sort of humour. But again, this is with adults at festivals in the evenings. And yeah, and it's just, so I've been really sort of playing with that. And I think now he's becoming, after working with Ollie, we decided that maybe he should be a bit more gender fluid.
Oh,
I know. So I'm sort of playing with that a little bit. But yeah, so
isn't it, as a woman putting yourself out there, you know, that, you know, with the breasts and that is still, it's still unsafe in a way, isn't it, that someone can come and do that to you. I think it's very telling, actually.
It is. It's really weird, and it's and when I'm walking along with my pram, you can see people, like, even though they're not talking verbally, the non-verbal communication is, don't look, it's the weirdo's coming towards us. So I found, as a walkabout, it's quite difficult. So what I do is I literally just go and plant myself somewhere and just have a pint or whatever, and then let people come to me, and that works much better like that. And then just have some pretty, you know, it's just completely improvised. Or one day I was taking my booth down dressed as Mr. Punch, and so I was actually framed by my booth. So in effect, I was in a theatre, and then people found that quite acceptable. So they were bringing me sausages and beer, and I had some really, like, these wonderful, like, it was just like a sort of audience with Mr. Punch. So people were kind of coming across, but being in that booth took away, I don't know, again, it's that, I don't know, the fourth wall sort of thing. I don't know. It's just, I don't quite know what happens when.
I feel like we're in little booths at the moment, aren't we? We're just,
we are.
But you do one thing, and you know that where we're on show. It's kind of,
yeah. And interestingly, I chatted to Tony Liddington, who was on last couple of weeks ago, wasn't he? And he did his PhD on itinerant showmen. And I said, why men? You know, why was it always men? And he very rightly said that, you know, even, you know, being out on the street busking and charging had you know, the whole vagrancy laws. And he said, you know, a woman out on the street getting money has an even sort of more sort of sinister connotation. So I guess it's only really sort of legally, I suppose, you know, fairly recently that women have been able to go out and busk. And there is the whole, like, you know, I do always work with somebody else, particularly when I'm doing my Mr. Punch routine. It has to be a bloke.
There was just definitely political issues around that. So have you done anything on the political sort of, like, Red Brigade side or anything?
That was a good little prompt there. Well, I know that I think it was about a year ago, actually. Martin Eek and myself, we just got really fed up of people talking about the government being clowns. So we decided to go outside Parliament. So I went as Mr. Punch, and he went in full clown, and we went up on the train completely in character.
Brilliant.
And we got a whole tube carriage singing with us. It was just fantastic. And then stood outside of the House of Commons or Parliament, and I had a bit of a contact at the BBC. So I just said, look, we're going to be out there. Didn't really think they'd turn up, but the BBC turned up and filmed us, and we just looked so wonderfully eccentric. I mean, I'm outside with a big banner with my swazzle. There's all these Brexit like people, and I'm singing, "Oh, I do like to be beside the seaside." Martin's on the other side of the road with a great big halo going, "Karina!" It was just, but the interview that the guy did was fantastic. It was really, really funny. And Martin was going, well, you know, Punch and Judy politics, how dare they? You know, in the space of 20 minutes, you know, Mr. Punch manages to, you know, keep quiet a sort of crying baby, you know, a policeman, even the devil, you know, in 20 minutes in this government.
That's fantastic.
we did that, and we did a couple of other just stood outside with signs saying comedy or tragedy, and just stood there as just, I was Mr. Punch, he was clown, and we had so much grief from all the Brexiteers. But it got really edgy, and the police were really lovely.
Yeah, that's so boundary breaking, isn't it? I mean, honestly, it's just. There was this article about, you know, the clowns can get away with saying things because they're clowns, and there is something about the mask, isn't it? The mask. And you know, if we're talking about puppetry, that you can say things that, you know, that you perhaps wouldn't if you were just
yeah. I know. And there was a guy next to us that he realised that as soon as Martin and I stood there when we were doing our anti-Brexit, well, our Brexit awareness. We tried not to sit on any side of the fence, even though we quite clearly were on the Remain side. But once we got quite a lot of press attention again. I think because we got quite a lot the first time we went. When we turned up again, they were like, the cameras were there straight away, and we knew Boris Johnson was going into Parliament, so we sort of timed it quite well. Oh no, it was Theresa May actually. And so we had quite a few Brexiteers next to us that started giving us some real like hassle, going, look, you know, this is what the Remainers look like. Look, bloody clowns. So it was just, it was hilarious.
Haven't they? They got a cheek.
But we were just stood there shouting really stupid things like, breakfast means breakfast. It doesn't mean dinner, it means breakfast. Like all these ridiculous slogans. Like, I don't know where they all came from. We just shouting this nonsense. So
I really wish I could have been there. I really wish I could have joined in.
We've got some photographs to prove it. But
I think we should go and do a socially distanced something. I don't know. I think we need these clown communities.
and then you mentioned the Red Brigade and with Extinction Rebellion. Obviously, for me, Extinction Rebellion has been this. You know, I've always felt like I've been this sort of like weirdo hippie lefty person that's always been shouting about climate change, and everyone goes, oh, it's the weirdo talking, you know, banging her same old drum again. And suddenly Extinction Rebellion came along, and I just thought, oh my God, this is, you know, like there's so many other like-minded people, and it's a vehicle to kind of get that across. And then came across the Red Brigade and ended up joining the Red Brigade back in the first rebellion in April, and I'm now one of the national leads on it.
Oh.
But we're supposed to be secret who we are. But that's been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, like that whole power of non-verbal silent protest, I mean non-violent silent protesters, you know, we've kind of, I don't know if you've seen any of the photographs in the papers, but we've actually gone right up to police and just in their faces, like completely expressionless, just staring them out for about 20 minutes at a time, like just saying nothing, obviously doing nothing, just looking as if we're looking beyond them. And some police have cried, some have just like completely crumbled, because it's just such a powerful thing. And I know that a friend of mine was on the first day of the October Rebellion, was on Waterloo Bridge when they first took Waterloo Bridge, and they did face up to the police for about 20 minutes there. And as they turned around to leave, my friend said he just put his, you know, this very sort of slow, sort of put his hand out towards this policeman. And he said this policeman kind of went, like as if he was being tasered almost, because he said he wasn't used to that kind of like giving. It was like this non-aggressive sort of act. And I think that's probably possibly one of the most moving things I think I've ever done in my life was, you know, during the whole October Rebellion, like walking through hunger strikers, walking through people that had been there for, you know, 2 weeks, and people would go, here come the Red Brigade, and everything would just go silent, and we'd sort of like process through, like obviously sort of very quiet, you know, silently, very slowly. And again, people just started crying. It was almost like they needed like an outlet of emotion, because, you know, emotions were so high, because, you know, overwhelmingly a lot of police were brilliant, but there were some pretty awful police scenes, you know, and particularly aimed at people with disabilities. So there was a lot of real kind of sort of tension. So I think the Red Brigade really kind of, they just seemed to be in the right place at absolutely the right time. And I don't know if you know, Doug Francisco from the Invisible Circus was the guy that started it off, and still kind of runs it, although he's bless him, he's stuck in Panama, can you believe? He's been stuck in Panama for since in lockdown since March. So, and obviously because of the social distancing, we can't do any red stuff at all at the moment.
No, I know. I mean, Dave has brought this huge clown community together via COVID, and we've been so lucky to be able to talk to, not for me just to talk to you, but to listen to all these different people in clown and circus from all around the world. So it's, oh, there we go.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Blow the cover, why don't you?
But isn't that, but thank you, Dave. Thank you for sharing. The beauty and the poignancy and the message is just, it's just quite astounding, isn't it? And I just wonder about this idea that we built this the community that builds and that can create an impact and deliver messages in a way that isn't about it is confrontational, but in a different.
But it's not about conflict. That's the thing, isn't it? And
Exactly.
it was just so interesting that, I mean, when you were face to face with a police man or woman, some of them would like look at their mates, go, oh, look, you know, start taking the piss and like, oh. But then after about 5 minutes, they kind of like got more and more kind of like really nervous, and they started like putting their hands in their pockets, looking at the floor, because it was, it was, I mean, it was so powerful. And just like, I think the most moving thing about it was just, we were a barricade one evening, because we went out about 3 times a day, just sort of supporting sort of people that, you know, around doing the protest. And we just walked away, and it was already really moving, because they'd had Greta Thunberg sort of speech blaring out of a great big PA, and we sort of turned and walked really slowly out, and this old man must have been in his 70s, 80s, just grabbed my hand and just fell to his knees and said, thank you, you're doing this for my grandchildren. It's giving me goosebumps even saying that then. And it's just really hard to like, not to just completely sob, but still try and keep that. We all, I mean, we had to have really pretty sort of big debriefs when there was a church at Waterloo that gave us space to change and to keep our costumes, and we really needed to go back at the end and debrief, because it was just so intense. But I mean, it's gone around the world, hasn't it? I mean, I think
it's just amazing.
There's been red brigades popped up all over the place.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, I love this. I love this urging of education and ecology and entertainment that you've brought to us, to the wider world. And I just wonder how we might build on that. Have you ever thought of, you know, you are educating the young people and their grown-ups, aren't you? So young people, then maybe they can be the educators.
Yeah, absolutely. And my real passion is going into really urban areas. I live in Reading, and there's some really beautiful woodlands in Reading that people just don't go into. I work with a friend who gets just really good at raising grants, so I go along either as a tree doctor or Professor Smarty Pants, and she does sort of other activities, and I do that. And so we're basically taking theatre to, like, you know, to areas of very sort of high deprivation, and people that probably would never engage with nature or with theatre. And there's I mean, even before COVID, but more so now, is people are beginning to realise the mental health and well-being of being outside in green open spaces. So I'm doing quite a lot of work behind the scenes of how we can be there at the forefront to try and sort of tackle those mental health and well-being issues of getting people outside sort of post-COVID, because it's perfect, because obviously transmission rates are lower outside. So I'm just sort of beavering at the way. I mean, it's nice having the downtime to actually sort of sit and think, which direction do I want to go? And it's just, yeah, it seems like quite the right moment to do it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We're coming up to our last 5 minutes. A call out to people listening. Again, it's that call out for please help continue these talks. If you can donate in other way to support Dave, then the way to do it is through Patreon. So it's Patreon, patreon.com, patreon.com/zoological, pronounced as at patreon.com/zoological. There's a website, zoological IE, for more information. And if there's anybody got any questions they'd like to put to Teresa before we stop recording, or we we finish, then please put them in the Q&A chat. I've got a couple, maybe 5 more minutes. I just want to touch on this idea of, just going back to this kind of this. You're in COVID, and you would probably have had lots of time to reflect and think, and what could we do next? Because in COVID, we've had this period of time when the environment has gone, and the trees have gone, and I just wonder, you know, how's that going to impact on your work at all? Is it, or?
I think just the fact that people have actually taken notice of nature, I think that's the thing. I think because people have slowed down, and there's been so much anecdotal evidence, isn't there, of people hearing bird song for the first time. I mean, it was always there. It's just, I guess, that when all the other distractions plus the lack of traffic have taken that out of the equation, and I guess because people have been, rather than zooming here, there and everywhere. I mean, certainly, even, you know, even as an ecologist myself, I've really, really enjoyed being in my garden and watching the, you know, really close up the sequence of flowers and insects on my own patch. And I think that's been the same for a lot of people. And I think it's, you know, that even people that haven't had access to, you know, to a garden have found their local open space has been like the godsend, hasn't it? Which is so tragic when they started closing parks.
You've done any kind of funny scenes in your garden that might kind of encourage?
Well, because I've been doing
magical garden.
Well, because I've been like sort of filming all my stuff in my garden for my online things. I've had we then started up a road WhatsApp group, and loads of people going, "Who's that? Why keep doing this funny voice in the garden?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, that's Teresa at number 30 with her swazzle," or "Oh yeah, that's Professor Smarty Pants." So it's kind of, yeah. So I think people have heard, you know, because I live in terraced housing, they've probably heard me doing my sort of doing my stuff.
That's one. I'm really glad to hear that you're still doing your stuff, Teresa.
Oh yeah, and funnily, I had a call from Radio Berkshire, was it last night or the night before, with the most ridiculous question, because they're always ringing me up. If they ever get a gap, they go, "Oh, phone Teresa, she'll chat for a, you know, for a little while." And their question was, "Are pigeons having more sex during lockdown?"
Yeah, like the humans and the seagulls.
I thought you're probably just watching a bit more. Just like
It's funny, we're going to wind up in a minute. It's funny you talking about clown. I run clown courses. I think mine are all right, actually. If anybody wants to come and do some clowning,
oh yes,
27th of June, not saying Exeter, you're not, it's actually online, you know, get in touch. Dave's going to be making this available via YouTube. So please, when it comes out, folks, can you share? I think it's important that we hear that ecology, entertainment, and education can be combined in such a playful and fantastic way. So we are about to wind up, Teresa. Thank you very much. I think